Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about why Edinburgh has vaults underneath it. So how are you all? Hope you are all happy and healthy and safe out there. Yes, I am back indoors. As you can see, Scotland has went back into... Merlin's crying, he wants to join us. Here we go. You're shaking the table, you need to sit back. Here we go, he's not been in a video for a while, so here he is, there's Merlin. Yeah, we're back indoors. Stop climbing on the table. It's going to be one of those sort of videos. Scotland went back into, I don't think we're technically in full lockdown, but we're definitely half an inch away from it. We're in a very strict tier 4. So we're indoors. That doesn't mean I can't tell you history of Scotland. So I hope you will still stick with us until I can get back out exploring again. So hopefully you'll enjoy me chatting to you anyway. So yeah, Edinburgh's got vaults underneath it, just in case you didn't know that already. Truthfully, it's kind of a funny status, because Edinburgh is built on 7 hills. So it's very up and downy a lot of the time. If you come to Edinburgh, I'm boring him already. If you come to Edinburgh, you'll find that out. There's an old kind of joke as you go about Edinburgh. As you go somewhere, you go uphill. As you come home from there, you still go uphill. It's that kind of place. So make sure you bring your walking shoes wherever you go. But when Edinburgh was at the point of expansion, I don't know if you remember, but Edinburgh was essentially walled in for quite a period of time. If you haven't seen the video where I trace the route of the Flodden Wall, then I will put that in the corner right now. So you can go check that out and see as I follow the route and search for it, because I didn't know where it was. It was quite fun. Search for the route of the Flodden Wall. But yes, as they were expanding from Edinburgh, Royal Mile, Old Town, the Old Town, into the New Town, they built bridges. Now, what they did was they built the North and South Bridge, which is essentially either side of the Royal Mile. So the Royal Mile comes down, there's the North Bridge, which heads into the New Town, which then, you know, goes to the Firth of Forth, and then you're out to Fife. And then the South Bridge, which goes the other way. Now the North Bridge, this is kind of difficult, but you're going to have to go with me here as I try to explain it. The Royal Mile comes down the hill, the North Bridge goes out to the north and over what used to be the Norloch. Then the Norloch was drained, the bridge was built, and then the new town started to expand that way. However, they were expanding the other way as well, and it's one of these things that tends to get forgot about. They didn't just expand that way, they expanded that way as well. The new town, Princess Street, George Street, Queen Street, all that sort of area tends to be what people think about all of a sudden, but they went the other way as well. Now, the bridge that goes to the south, the South Bridge, funnily that's where we're really going to start to look at. That's where you really want to think about the vaults. Now, if you walk along the South Bridge, if you walk from the Royal Mile along the South Bridge, you would be forgiven for not realising that you're walking over a bridge. You would think that it is all flat, and it's because the Royal Mile that goes down, which heads to the Cowgate and the Grassmarket kind of area, it goes down, but then it very sharply comes back up again, like that. So I'm trying to do this with my hands for you to understand, and it's not easy with a dog on top of you, and a baby crying in the background as well. So now that they've built this South Bridge that goes over this kind of valley, essentially, is probably a nice way to think about it. They then started building buildings either side of that. So now as you go across the South Bridge, you would be forgiven. If you didn't know, you wouldn't think you're going across the bridge. And it's only if you go down, say, Niddry Street, you will start to see that actually there is a bridge. There is a bridge. So it goes down, and the bridge, as any bridge does, have arches. Now, you look at the North Bridge, you can quite plainly see, because it goes over Waverley train station, you can quite easily see the big arches. It's really easy to see, you just look and there they are. However, you can't see them for the South Bridge because there's buildings either side. You go down by the Tronkirk on one side and you go down by Nidri Street on the other of South Bridge, you won't see them because there's buildings in the way. There's buildings all the way down the side. Now, in these archways, they built these vaults deliberately, because when they built the bridge and they were expanding out and they were creating this sort of area, they thought, we'll build these sort of vaulty areas and then we'll rent them out. We'll rent them out to businesses, tanners, butchers, all these sort of things as a kind of storage area. And for a little while, that's what they started off as. However, they hadn't built it to be waterproof. They didn't build it to actually take into consideration that the rain, which it does a lot here in Scotland, was going to land on the bridge and it was going to have to go somewhere and it was going to seep through. So the rain started to seep through all the bridge into all these vaults. And the businesses that were in there very quickly said, well, this is no good. This is no good for us. We need to leave. So the tanneries, the butchers, whatever else was there, just abandoned it. And as soon as all these areas and vaults and everything was free, then other things started to just go, well, they're not being used, so we'll take over. Homeless people started to go in there. Brothels started to use these little areas. And eventually they became these horrible, horrible areas. And this, I think this is where the idea of Edinburgh having an underground city sort of comes from. There's lots of rumours that you hear that there's an entire city underneath Edinburgh. There's not an entire city underneath Edinburgh. You can see the remnants of some streets if you go into the Tronkirk. I don't know if you can see it now, but you used to be able to go into the Tronkirk, and it was like an archaeological dig. You could see the outlines of some buildings, some streets and things like that used to be there. And if you go into Mary King's Close, for example, as well, then you can see an old street, but it's not exactly deep underground, and there's not a whole city under there. That's a street. Mary King's Close was created because I think if you really look at where it is, the City Chamber is being built on top in the building of Coburn Street, then that building just kind of got sealed on top of and locked and then forgot about and then rediscovered, and the vaults was kind of the same. I think the idea of this being an underground city came from the fact that these vaults, in the bridges, these sort of arched vaults in the bridges, gained a life of their own. All these sort of homeless people in brothels and dens of iniquity and all this illegal stuff that started to go on in there, and it wasn't nice in there, started to gain a reputation for having these, just being a horrible place and being this underground city. More sort of underground as in evil, like the black market kind of thing, rather than underground. Because although it is underneath the bridge, you're kind of in line with the it looks underground when you're in it, and it is underground. It's underneath the bridge, you're underneath the houses and the streets, but it's also down the side of a valley. It's really difficult to explain without being there, but I'll try and put some pictures in, so hopefully you understand what I mean. This idea of there being an underground city, unfortunately, there's not as much as you would like. There's the odd street here or there that got boarded up, and there's these vaults which are inside the shaping of the bridge, which are hidden by the shaping of the buildings. So the vaults are there, they are kind of underground, but at the same time, they're equally not as much underground as they are underground. This is getting really difficult for you to understand. Let me start again. There's a bridge, there's a valley, there's arches underneath the bridge, at the same point as the valley. Yeah, and in these arches they were sectioned off, and smaller little vaults were built in these arches. These arches were then used for various things, for something with it. Anyway, so some of these arches, yes, they will be in line and underneath the street. Some of them will be in the street. They're all that sort of way. Hopefully I've found a picture to illustrate that a little bit better. Anyway, eventually, because of the reputation and the underground and the nastiness of this area, the Edinburgh Council eventually said, we need to shut this down. This is not a nice area. It's a breeding ground for disease. So they blocked off these areas. They completely shut them down, and they locked them down and blocked them off. And they essentially got forgot about all these underground areas where horrible things happened, like horrible things happened under there. They're not nice areas. And some of them had been excavated and built upon because they were originally designed to be used. Like I said, when the bridges and things were built and the vaults were built underneath the bridges, they were designed for businesses to use. So then so they're not, they look like chambers. They look like areas you would build in a cellar of a building. You know what I mean? They look like buildings because essentially they are in a certain sort of way. I'm rambling, I know that. I hope you're going with me here. And they were forgotten about. They were forgotten about for a long time. It's only around about 1980s, that they were rediscovered. And the history of them was rediscovered. And they're essentially untouched. So you can go and visit them, where all these sort of things happened, and there's some dark stories in some of these vaults and tunnels, as well as the fact that they were originally what they originally had in mind. Like I said, a darker element of Edinburgh moved into them once the businesses moved out. And there's a couple of tours around Edinburgh. If you want, you can go into them. Auld Reekie, Market Tours, these sort of places will take you into these vaults underneath the city, and it's fascinating. It is incredible, but it's not an underground city. As in, I remember when I was younger, the rumour, the urban legend that I heard was the plague ravaged the city, so what they did was essentially just locked everyone in their houses that had the plague and then just built a city on top of that. I remember that being the story that I heard a lot of, and that's not quite what happened. It's not quite exactly how it all went down. But that, I hope, in a roundabout way, I have rambled a lot with this one today, but that is kind of why there are vaults underneath the city of Edinburgh. If you get a chance, if you're here in Edinburgh and that's the kind of history, the darker side of the history that you want to see, I highly recommend it. All the tours are brilliant. I mean, you're getting to go into these areas that are essentially untouched. The only thing that's generally been changed is they'll have brought some cables in and run them along the ground and things just to make sure there's some lighting in there and fire exits and things like that. But the vaults themselves, they are exactly how they were when they were originally made. So hopefully, if you're here in town, once the world goes back to normal, you can get a chance to go in them. This has been a funny video. I hope I have explained why Edinburgh has the vaults underneath it to the best of my ability. But if you are confused, I don't blame you. I hope I've explained that. But like I've said, I'm not a historian. I am not a historian anyway. I just enjoy history and I enjoy telling you the stories. That is all. But I am not a historian. I don't have any qualifications or degree or anything like that in this. I just like chatting to you. Hope you've enjoyed this today, guys. If you have, why don't you go check out their second channel, which has now been relaunched as Exit Through the Gift Shop. I just put a new video in there. You can go check that out right here, where I try to make root beer. Hence the word, try to make root beer. Please go check it out and remember to subscribe to that channel as well. It would genuinely mean the world. And if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like, comment, and of course subscribe here as well. Wherever you are in the world, keep yourself safe and healthy. Till next time, bye humans.